you please comment on blockchain? What do you see happening there, and how do you utilizing, and what's your plans for blockchain at Close?
Yeah, I mean, the blockchain is it's fascinating. You know, it's so before I left IBM, I was part of the IBM blockchain team, working on developer tools primarily for IBM blockchain platform, but within the Hyperledger open source community. And yeah, what I saw there was that there's an awful lot of effort going into essentially sharing data across a consortia or a group of interested companies, however you want to call that, using distributed ledger technology. So it's really about data sharing, right? It's like, okay, you and I, we want to do some sort of transaction. We've decided that I don't fully trust you, you don't fully trust me. So we're going to put some distributed infrastructure in between us. We call that a blockchain. And we're going to use that infrastructure to share state. So we'll spend a lot of time probably deciding, okay, well, what state do we want to put on the blockchain? You know, what's the shape of that state so that we can both understand it, read it, and write it. And that, I think, represents probably 80–90% of the engineering effort that has gone into blockchain. Now, the reality is that if you and I have a business relationship, it really starts with a contract, usually a paper contract, right? We decide, I want to sell you some goods and you need to deliver them to me by a certain date and you're going to pay a certain price. And if I deliver them late, then you owe me penalties. And traditionally, those are all written down as words. And somehow we need to make sure those words are legally enforceable in a court of law, because, you know, if you or I renege on our commitments, then you really don't have any other choice but to go to court and try to sue me to get your money back or your goods back. But we also want to make those terms and conditions, obligations machine readable, because that would allow us then to run some of that logic on the blockchain. So really where Clause has been focused is, how do we take those words on the page and bind them to logic so that we can kind of have the best of both worlds? We can have a human readable natural language contract with some machine processing behind it. Kind of two sides of the same coin, if you like. So blockchain, when I started out on this journey 2–3 years ago, it was probably at the sort of close to the top of the hype curve. You know, it was going to cure cancer and everything in between. I think now we're in a much more kind of healthy place.
Yeah.
I would say we're descending. I don't know if we're at the bottom of the trough of disillusionment, but we can probably see it if we're not, or we've either in the rear view mirror or in front of us. But there's still a lot of blockchain work going on. I don't think it's getting anywhere near the hype that it did get, and it's certainly, you know, a lot of the speculators have moved on, which is very healthy.
And realistic too, right? Because last thing you want is hype around the trend, and then it dies and nobody remembers. It's like first AI winter, right? And then we picked it up 20 years later or what? So yeah, I hear you.
Exactly. What I see is there are fairly big projects that are underway that are being built. This is really complicated stuff because you're taking 4 or 5 companies usually that may often be competitors in some aspects in the market, and they're trying to cooperate, sort of co-opetition, and agree what data they want to share and what they want to share it, and agree on the intellectual property for sharing all that data, and in some cases build shared utilities, so actual, you know, joint ventures to manage this new infrastructure. So it's complicated, and I think realistically what we've seen is that that's kind of a game for the big boys. You know, it's the people playing in that space are really the Accentures, the IBMs of the world that, you know, frankly, they have 20–30 architects they can put onto a project like that, and potentially also a lot of developers to help build out the infrastructure.